let's talk about material container changes on GP Reeves pumps. This process is fairly universal for all of our pumps, including the GSP, GSPM, GDP, GDPM, GNDP, and G6DP. Before we get started with the process, we'd recommend grabbing some shop rags, a long skinny screwdriver, an empty bucket, trash bags, and a scraper. Make sure you're wearing proper safety equipment and are following the proper lockout-tagout procedure set in place by your company. Take note of both regulator settings for later. The changeout process consists of two parts, removing the empty container and installing the new one. We'll start by removing the empty container. First, shut off the pump by either turning the knob or pushing the button labeled Pump Shut Off. This will ensure that it does not continue cycling during the container change. You should hear the air being relieved from the circuit. You'll know the pump was shut off correctly if the pump pressure gauge reads 0. Next, you'll want to open the inductor air assist. Depending on what model pump you have, you'll either turn the valve to point parallel with the fitting body, pull out the knob, or turn it to the on position. This will allow air into your empty container, preventing a vacuum from forming within it. Next, rotate the ram elevator control valve to the ram up position. Once the ram has begun to move, begin feathering the valve by switching between the ram up and the stop positions. This will prevent the container from being lifted from the pump frame. When the inductor is approximately 1/2 inch from the top of the container, rotate the valve to the stop position and then turn off the inductor air assist. This will ensure air doesn't continue to pressurize the container, which can cause the seal to pop out at the top and spray material from around the seal. Once the air assist is off, you can move the ram elevator control valve back to the up position and let it travel up and out of the container until it stops. At this point, you can remove the empty container. Keep the valve in the up position for the duration of the container change. Though it may be tempting, it is not a good idea to try and move the remaining material from this container into your new one. This will cause air bubbles in your material, which can be dangerous when put back in the pump. If your system is for grease and there's going to be a large gap of time before installing the new material container, wrap your inductor with plastic wrap or a garbage bag to minimize contamination entering the system. If you're using moisture-cure material, do not let the inductor rest before putting it in the new container. You don't want the material to begin curing inside the pump. Next, we'll install the new container. Check for any tears, gouges, or wear on the edges of the inductor. If your pump has a solvent cup, ensure there is enough solvent present. We'll also clean off any material that may have gathered on top of the inductor plate. Make sure to visually inspect any hardware or fasteners for any noticeable issues. If the same material is going to be used in the pump, the material on the bottom of the inductor does not need to be cleaned off. However, if a new material is used, it is recommended. If you're using moisture-cure material, ensure that the material on the bottom of the inductor has not hardened. Once your inductor is ready, load the new material container into place. We'd recommend the use of an inductor liner for adhesives and sealants to prevent material from curing on your inductor seal. Check that the center hole is large enough to clear the inductor vents. Center it on the container before lowering the inductor. It helps to have two people, one who can operate the elevator. The liner can be replaced if it's damaged or material has cured on it. If your container locators are adjusted properly, the container should slide right in. Otherwise, they may need to be adjusted. The most important part of this step is ensuring the container is centered beneath the inductor plate. Once the container is centered, you can begin lowering the inductor. As soon as the inductor is level with the top of the container, you'll begin the material bleeding process. We have another video that goes into more detail about the bleeding process. If you've never bled your pump before, we'd strongly recommend checking that out so you don't end up wearing your material. Once your pump is properly bled and all of your valves and ports are completely shut, it's time to turn the pump back on. To turn the pump on, either rotate the red pump shutoff knob, pull the black pump shutoff button, or turn the black knob to the on position. You can tell whether or not the pump is active by verifying that the air pressure on the pump regulator has returned to its original setting. If you adjusted the ram regulator at all, return it to its original pressure setting before continuing on. If equipped with a solenoid valve, the pump will only be active when the solenoid is on. If you were able to keep air out of the pump during the material change and the pump was bled and primed appropriately, then the pump should not cycle more than once or twice after you have turned the pump back on. If this is the case, congratulations! You changed your material container and you can resume operation as usual. If you'd like one last confirmation everything was done properly, or if your pump is continuing to cycle after you have finished the change-out procedure, we recommend doing a final bleed and prime at the pump bleed valve. Check out our How to Bleed Your Pump video for more information. If you have any other questions that weren't answered in this video or the troubleshooting video, please give us a call. We'd be happy to help.